Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to try and explain a little bit about what I've done here. I've got various, as you can see, I've got various printouts of your actual painting and the reference photo itself, and also I've got some sort of close-up shots of each of the features that we're going to be working on today, apart from the hair. So I'm going to start with the hair, and I'll get onto that in a minute. What I've actually done here is I've kind of recreated your painting, and the way I've done that is I've basically just printed off the painting in colour on 2 sheets of A4 paper and pieced them together, pasted them down onto a board, and having problems with the light here. It's just starting to rain, but I'm trying to do it so that the light is even enough, so bear with me. Okay, yeah, as I was saying, I've pasted the colour printouts onto a board, and then in order to be able to paint over the paper, what I've done is I've just coated the whole paper with a clear gesso to give it a sort of painterly tooth to take up the paint. And then what I've done is, using the image of your actual painting, I've just kind of, and also, you know, from what I could see from the colour printouts, I've just basically gone over the whole thing using acrylic paint, just to kind of mimic your brushwork as faithfully as I could do. It's not perfect, it won't be exactly the same, obviously, and you know, there's going to be differences, but the reason I did that is because you can paint oil over acrylic, and I was a bit nervous about trying to paint the oil directly on to the gessoed paper, because I just felt it needed a bit more to kind of grip onto. So that's why I've rendered it, the whole thing, in acrylic with the background as well. So as I say, I'm going to start this with the hair. Now on the reference photo, again, we're dealing with computer printout, so there's always going to be differences, so you kind of have to use your own judgment. On this reference photo I've got here, you know, I can see fairly clearly, you know, the texture and the colour of your hair. It's very similar to mine, actually. So I'm just going to start with the hair. So I'm going to start mixing some hair colour here, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start with a Naples yellow, a bit of Naples yellow. I want some burnt umber, I'm going to get some yellow ochre, a little bit, over here, if it'll come out. All my paint tubes need some attention, actually. I need to wipe all the lids around, what have you. I'm just going to have a little bit of the Payne's grey and a little bit of titanium white there down on the palette, not too much. Okay, so I think that's kind of going to give me the basis of the hair colour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take up the largest brush I've got here, which is a size 6. It's a round size 6. And I'm just going to take up a bit of the Naples yellow first and mix that down on the palette. I'm just going to take a little bit of the yellow ochre as well. And I'm just dipping my brush into the Terps medium just to kind of loosen up that paint a bit. I'm just going to take a little touch of the umber, the burnt umber, so we're getting like a sort of lightish brown. Maybe a touch of the Payne's grey to knock it back, because we don't want it to be too yellow. So we want, I'm quite liking that. Right, so I'm going to start painting in the hair. And my approach to painting hair is quite sort of sketchy at first. I just kind of like to lay down the brush strokes in the direction that the hair is kind of moving in. So with yours it's sort of going upwards as it's sort of swept back. And I'm putting in the lighter tones first. I'm just kind of feathering the marks. I haven't got a massive amount on my brush. Just taking up. So at this stage I'm just really working with the Terps to begin with. Just to kind of loosen that up, because we're still working in fairly thinnish layers. It's going to be a bit tricky because my arm is going to be sometimes in the way, but I'm going to try and get it so you can see what I'm doing a bit more here. So I'm observing that towards the temple the hair sort of points downwards a little bit, and then you've got all your wisps of hair at the side and a little bit over the ear. I need to paint that ear in again, but we'll just deal with the hair at the minute. And again I'm just feathering back towards the hairline, because what I'm trying to avoid is starting it there. You know, if you take the brush and just paint like that, you get like a blunt mark, as you can see there, around a little bit, which kind of makes it quite difficult, because then you've got to deal with trying to blend that back, which can be a bit tricky. Okay, so that's the kind of lighter tones that I'm putting in. Now obviously it's looking a little bit kind of straw-like and yellow, and so we need to balance the tones, because we've got a few things going on. We've got the natural colour of your hair and the tone of the colour of your hair, but we've also got the play of light on the hair. Okay, so I've just realised that had a bit of a problem. The demo, for some reason my camera cut out, so I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit on what I was doing. So I think we saw me put in that mid-tone on the hair. All I've really done here now is I've started out with a mid-tone, so I mixed up some of the, I started with the Naples yellow. I put in a little bit of yellow ochre and a little tiny bit of the raw umber, and we got a sort of straw-like mix up which did the kind of mid-tone. So I just reinstate a little bit of that, get rid of it off my brush. So all I was doing really was painting upwards and outwards. I'm gutted that that happened. This is part of the problem with wonderful technology. Okay. And then all I did was I just started to bring in some of these other colours to make a darker tone. So I brought in a bit more raw umber, a bit of the Payne's grey, to kind of get, you know, picking up a bit of the mid-tone as well, so all the colours relate to each other. Okay, and then it was just a case of bringing those dark tones towards the bottom and sort of painting them in and down towards the hairline. Okay, to get the effect of the hair kind of bending in, so it's kind of going in and then coming out and being flicked back. So it's going to be, as you can see on the reference picture, it's darker to where it meets the scalp than it is as it gets lighter and where the light is hitting it as well, because it, you know, it's picking up the light from the light source, the window. So really you're just working with three tones: a mid-tone, a darker tone, and then I also brought in a little bit of burnt sienna because you've got more kind of reddish tones as well. And as I said in the other demonstration that didn't record, I'm keeping my eye on it now to make sure it doesn't happen again. Just to introduce that into the mid-tone, and then I also, because I haven't got that much paint on my brush, I'm only really using touches of the terps and the linseed, bringing it in. To just to kind of work with the bristles of the brush really to get it to describe. Because if you have too much paint on the brush, then you're just painting a lot of paint down and it gets quite clumpy. So it's quite important. I always just use the edges of the easel to, you know, get rid of any excess paint, and just kind of use the bristles of the brush to help you describe, especially with hair. The other thing you can do if you want is, once you've put, if you want to reintroduce some texture down, you can actually just use the end of the brush to kind of, almost like a comb, to kind of comb through and just further accentuate and reintroduce a bit of texture in. And you'll get these fine, you know, if you can pull the paint out, you can sort of describe very fine hair, wispy hair that sort of meets the background. But just to backtrack on what I've done, so basically I started with a mid-tone using the Naples yellow, a bit of the yellow ochre, and a tiny bit of raw umber, mixed with just picking up a little bit of the terps on my brush, and then painting, describing the hair going up and out, just in sort of gentle sweeps of the brush with not very much paint on the brush. And then I introduced the darker tone. So that was just a bit of Payne's Grey and raw umber mixed with the mid-tone to paint down near the scalp line to describe how the hair kind of bends down as it attaches to the scalp. So I've kind of, it'll be different when you do it as well, because obviously you'll need to adjust the colours. You'll see different colours to me, no doubt, in whatever reference picture you're working from. And also, you know, you are doing a picture of yourself, so you know better than I do what the true colour of your hair is. But all you kind of really are doing here is just refining what you've already got. As I was saying, I quite like what you've already got so far here, although it kind of, for me, it's a little bit stiff for hair, so we just try to refine it so it behaves a little bit more like hair, but you're not losing the painterliness of it, if that makes sense. So you can still have your kind of quite choppy brush marks, and you can always, you know, reintroduce things. For instance, if you wanted to bring a bit more definition into the brushwork where the light is hitting the hair, you know, you can do that. You can, you know, perhaps do that sort of thing. And that's just a little bit of the white mixed with the mid-tone colour of the hair. So you can just kind of, so I hope you can see what I'm doing with the brush marks. I'm just kind of overlapping and trying to mimic the direction and the play of the lay of the hair, if you like. Just going to sort this bit out at the top, because we don't want a sort of blunt line. We want this to kind of blend nicely with the background. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that as it is for the minute. We're struggling a little bit with light. The light is changing really dramatically today. It's quite dull, but I don't really want to put my overhead lights on, because I've managed to position this easel to make sure that we don't get any cast shadows on the actual painting. So if I was to put my overhead lights on, we would get a lot of cast shadow from my hands and everything. So hopefully that will be clear enough. So what we're going to do next is to move on to working on the face. we're going to look at where the hair meets the scalp, and kind of work with this line, this kind of hairline. I think we're almost there with it. We just need to soften it a little bit, and then we're going to work on the eyes and a little bit onto the face. Okay, just really to tidy everything up and to give it a little bit more clarity. So we're going to start to work on the forehead, just where, on the hairline, just where the hair meets the skin. I'm going to stick with my size 6 brush, my round size 6 brush. I've just basically cleaned it off a little bit. I've just dipped it in the terps and wiped it a little bit. And I'm sticking with the hair colours because most of these colours we'll be using in the flesh tone anyway, particularly the Naples yellow and the yellow ochre and the white. But I'm going to introduce just some of this alizarin crimson as well. So I'm going to bring the Naples yellow into the middle. I've just got a little bit of terps on my brush as well, and again I'm going to take up a little bit of the yellow ochre and a little bit of the white there. Well, that is actually titanium white, so what I'm going to do, I do want some titanium white, but I'm going to mainly use actually the zinc white, and the difference being is zinc white offers a bit more in the way of transparency, whereas titanium white tends to be more opaque. It's less transparent, which is useful for some things and not so useful for others. So hope you can see there, I've sort of got a fleshy tone there. I'm going to just nudge the brush onto that little bit of alizarin crimson, so there's hardly any on there at all. I'm just going to bring that in just to kind of warm it up a little bit. Do that. In fact, I'm going to bring in a little bit of burnt sienna as well. That's quite a lot of burnt sienna, but let's see where. So I'm quite liking that kind of, it's kind of a sort of rosy flesh tone. And I'm going to just dab my brush into the linseed as well, just to up the viscosity and extend that paint a bit more. Okay, so coming to the painting, I've loaded my brush with my pigment, and I'm just going to again just blot off some of that paint. I'm just going to paint up near to the hairline, because what I'm observing on the reference picture is more of a kind of yellowy tone on the top of the forehead, or forehead as some people say, which kind of extends round. Again, I'm just revisiting the palette, dipping my paint in dipping my brush in the paint and picking up little bits of linseed, just tiny bits really, and then painting that on to the forehead, just kind of a little bit away from the hairline. Okay, and then I'm going to bring a bit more of this crimson colour in, and then I'm going to blend that with the yellow ochre. If you put crimson and yellow ochre together, you get this beautiful, it's almost like a terracotta, peachy terracotta colour that is just so lovely in skin tone. I'm just bringing a little bit of that tone into it as well, because I don't want it to be too intense. And coming back to the portrait, I'm just going to paint, introduce that lovely warm kind of orangey pink colour. And blend it into the hairline. So you're just kind of working between the two. And continue painting that hairline area. So I'm just adjusting the key of the tone, so we're just playing with the colours that we've got there. So I'm just mixing various kind of flesh tones to blend everything together, because I want to take away that kind of orangey yellow pallor a bit. And again, you know, as I said before, it's going to change, you know, on your actual painting. You'll be making slightly different judgments based on the information you have on your reference photo. I'm just kind of trying to demonstrate how we marry this hairline and make it look convincing with the hair. So what I'm doing is just gently trying to feather the flesh tone in with the hair. So you're kind of working them together, if you like, with just kind of almost just softly blending without losing the integrity of the brush mark, if that makes sense. So you've just got this very light gentle transition. So I'm just picking up little bits of the flesh tone. I'm just adjusting it. As you can see, I've got a darker kind of more pinky orangey colour and a pink colour there. Then I've got more of a light flesh tone and a mid flesh tone. So I've got a few options there, and it's only really all mixed up just using 3 colours and the white really. And it's the zinc white I'm mainly using, and I'm occasionally just dipping my brush into the linseed oil as well, just to plump up the paint and give it a bit more viscosity. And the reason I'm painting further down onto the forehead is because as soon as you start painting, in any area, you will have to kind of blend it a little bit with what you've already put down. But as I say, at this stage in the game, the amount of paint that you're using is so minimal. It's, you know, you kind of using it quite sparingly, so you're always being able to see through to what you've done previously. I'm just adjusting the light, and light is a bit of an issue today because it's been very changeable, the weather. It's been extremely sort of wet but sunny as well, so and I'm trying to work just with the natural light coming in at the window rather than resisting putting on my studio lights, because I don't really want any cast shadow on this. And again, I'm sticking with my number 6 round brush to kind of just do this sort of light feathering. Now I'm observing on this reference picture that into this kind of blue area where the face falls into shade, we've got more of a kind of purple going on. So I'm going to find myself my Prussian blue. I'm just going to put a little bit down on the palette, tiniest of bits, not hardly any really. And again, I'm just going to take the tiniest bit and bring it in, pick up a little bit of the crimson as well, and just bring it into that flesh tone, the darker flesh tone. So I'm getting a sort of it's a flesh tone, but it's got more blue in it. It's almost like a lilac colour, and I'm just going to gently introduce it in to that. I'm going to pick up a bit of the linseed, make it nice and semi-transparent, because I don't want to completely get rid of that blue. I want to be able to see the blue through it, so that's quite nice. Yeah. As I'm painting this, it's kind of difficult to ascertain until I can look at the film exactly what you can actually see happening, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that. Let's just bring in a bit more of the crimson with the yellow ochre. I'm just going to bring that into that kind of bluey purpley mix there and introduce that a little bit more up by the hairline, and then I'm just going to kind of feather that really subtle into the hairline. Okay, so you're getting this, it's hardly even there. You just kind of move that up into the hair. Okay, so you kind of soften that transition between the flesh and the hair. It kind of looks a little bit more believable, if you like. And because, you know, we've now got these kind of reddish tones, you know, you want to kind of unify it by introducing some of that into the other areas of the face. So you introduce a bit more balance through the whole thing. And as I say, it's all about just constantly shifting focus, making a judgment each time as to what you need to do, which kind of comes with experience, has to be said. You know, with each painting that you do, you'll kind of remember what you did in the previous one, and you build up on your knowledge, and that's kind of how you sort of come to develop your own kind of style and methods for doing things, which change all the time. I mean, every painting that I do, I wouldn't say that I work to an absolute formula for everything. You know, it does change, you know, it depends on what I'm painting and, you know, what I'm trying to achieve each time. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there with the hairline. Hopefully you can see that, and in the next phase of this, when we come to do the glazing, we'll work on that a little bit more, because we're going to be looking at the edges of everything, you know, trying to kind of differentiate between what is background and, you know, very much in the background, and what is foreground. So, but we'll move on to that. I think the next part, we're going to start really looking at the individual features and how we can just kind of sharpen everything up, and just add a bit more definition into everything. So that's the next part, and we'll get onto that just as soon as I've cleaned off my brush. So bear with me.